welcome to our special coverage on the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting. I'm Wang Mengmang in Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping will be in San Francisco for a 4-day visit. He's due to hold talks with U.S. President Joe Biden and attend the 30th APEC Economic Leaders Meeting. President Xi and President Biden are expected to have in-depth discussions on issues of fundamental importance and address major issues concerning world peace and development. Now, the meeting is the second face-to-face meeting between the two presidents in a year. The two leaders met last November in Bali, Indonesia. Under the theme, Creating a Resilient and Sustainable Future for All, APEC 2023 focuses on 3 policy priorities to ensure an interconnected, innovative, and inclusive Asia-Pacific region. Stay with us for the latest there. While San Francisco is the host city of this year's APEC Leaders Meeting and the China-U.S. Summit, world leaders will gather in the city to discuss regional economic and other development issues. And now let's hand things over to my colleagues Anna Naidu, Tian Wei, and Jim Spellman. Good afternoon to you. It's early morning here in Beijing. Great to see you there. Looks like a busy week ahead in San Francisco.
Yes, indeed, Mang, thank you so much for that head up. It's already a very busy day, I guess, with our 2 colleagues sitting here in our CGTN's special studio from San Francisco. As you said, according to the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs earlier readout, this visit by the Chinese president to the United States and both the summit as well as the 30th APEC Economic Leaders Meeting are going to be of tremendous importance, particularly the bilateral between the 2 presidents, China and the United States, on issues that are strategic, overarching, and fundamental in shaping both China-U.S. relations and also in peace and development of the world. But of course, over the past few days, we've been talking to everybody here arriving, and people are saying they're looking at some pragmatic results, and they're not expecting more than they can. So, Anand?
Yeah, right. You know, this meeting is taking place at a crucial time for the globe right now. I mean, if we look around and see what's going on, there's an economic slowdown. There are 2 major conflicts taking place in the world right now. There are other issues, energy security, food security, that have to be looked at as well. There's labor issues. There are immigration issues as well. So the leaders will definitely have their work cut out for them. And if we look more specifically at some of the economic issues that they'll be talking about, it is about expansion. It is about investment. Sometimes you'll hear it being referred to as creating more inclusive economies, and that's about expansion. But as I said, you know, they're also going to be talking about women's empowerment, women's rights, labor rights, food security, health issues will also get a bit of attention. I mean, if we look at the 2 biggest economies in the world, the United States and China, I mean, these economies are closely intertwined. They are highly dependent on each other. They have significant investments in each other's country. So that bilateral that you're talking about will also focus on that. I mean, we have seen tensions in the recent past with initially the tariffs that were imposed by former President Donald Trump, and then China countered with its own tariffs that were imposed against American imports. So I think the 2 presidents will be discussing ways to ease those tensions, perhaps open the way, open the markets a bit more so that we could see that kind of expansion.
Let the conversation going, isn't it? That's the whole purpose to start with.
The White House is saying that there may be some small takeaways, some small deliverables, but the real deliverable is just reopening channels of communication at the military level, at the senior administration level, and even at the staff level. And that's what's so important at a meeting like this. All of those levels can get face-to-face communication. You talk about trade. I mean, I think for decades it was widely seen that trade was a catalyst for peace. If 2 countries need each other economically, that will bring peace. But that has really shifted at the beginning with the tariffs under the Trump administration, continued in the Biden administration, and then all of these tech restrictions. So I think there's really a sense that something needs to shift in the trade relationship to really help get the communication to a better place and to ensure that this is a more peaceful, stable, well-managed relationship. And one last thing that an analyst said to me was that this does not have to be a relationship that is perfected, it has to be a relationship that is well-managed.
On the one hand, of course, the bilateral is extremely important as to what they can bring from their own home turf to be at the table. But at the same time, atmosphere ambience, as we know, any kind of conversation and dialogue, extremely important. So let's take a look at what is the ambience here. We are in the state of California. Both of you know better than I do about this specific place. It's the gateway to the Pacific region. And of course, it's also one of the largest states that are doing business with China. Look at the Governor Newsom's earlier visit to China, certainly a lot already on the memorandum. Also, this is with the backdrop of Asia Pacific Economic Forum. So people are here to talk about economy, to talk about trade, to talk about how to improve the economies together. Earlier, we all talked to different newsmakers. One of them I talked to is the executive director of the APEC Secretariat. And she said, we are here. We want to hear these two presidents bring us more concrete results as to what they can bring to better growth in our economies. So I think that is the most important thing also here, ambience, the environment.
And remember, we're about an hour's drive from Silicon Valley.
Yes,
there are
indeed.
CEOs from all of the tech companies up here. They want face time with these leaders as well. And we're at such a crossroads when it comes to AI, digital currencies, so much opportunity, also a lot of risk, a lot of need for caution, rules of the road. And that's another thing that I think is really important, is that mix of those private sector people with the government leaders. You talk about ambience from the White House, from the State Department. Over the last 6 months or so, there's been a real shift in tone. We'll see if it's backed up, as the meeting goes forward, but a real shift in tone, a much more positive outlook towards this relationship.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a shift in tone. We will actually see that shift. We're going to see what is being described as a very highly choreographed meeting between the two leaders when they do meet on Wednesday. But we also have to remember that what we are seeing right now is actually the culmination of perhaps a year of intense diplomatic activity between China and the United States. We saw a string of cabinet members from the United States make their way to China over the past few months. I mean, it included the Secretary of State, Tony Blinken. It included the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen. The Trade Secretary was there as well.
Special envoy, climate change.
Right. So they've laid the groundwork for what we are going to see here. And to get back to your earlier point, is that I think what people will be looking for, what the other member economies will be looking for, are practical deliverables that they can act upon right now.
That's a very interesting point. It seems that between China and the United States, if there is a will, there will be a way. Just think about that. It only started the interaction at the cabinet level as late as April. So we're only 6 or 7 months from the very start of it. And it could already create the ambience of this. Of course, when the relationship went down over the past few years, it was also quite fast. So many say it really depends on the consensus coming from both sides as to whether they are sincere in this conversation, whether they really want to bring some to the table for sincere results of this conversation.
A senior administration official briefing reporters about a week ago said to us that there's an acknowledgement in Washington that for decades, Washington has been trying to use many tools to essentially change the Chinese system. And there's a realization that that has failed, that China is here to stay, and that has to be the approach going forward. And I think that leads into, when you hear President Xi calling for win-win cooperation, mutual respect. I think there is more of a sense of that. However, it is still bad politics to be pro-China in Washington in either parties right now. And that is a big challenge.
That's right. Let's not forget that this
up.
is taking place and we're just a year away from the elections right now. But I think what will focus the minds of these leaders is the fact that the world is going through a slowdown right now, and it's impacting developing countries especially hard. We may be over the COVID-19 pandemic, but the effects of that pandemic are still being felt. Many of these developing countries are having to play catch up right now. They're needing more and more investment. Remember that many of the countries that are in APEC will be looking at that as well. So as far as the other member states are concerned, they will be looking to attract more investment in their countries. And there are international issues that they'll be looking at. I spoke about the two conflicts earlier on. I mean, that's impacting the entire world. There are other issues like how we develop and use artificial intelligence. That's one of the things that was highlighted when we looked at the preparations for this meeting.
And also climate change as well. That is really the global challenge facing everybody. It's not a slogan, it's really for sure, because this state, the state of California, also knows that very well in terms of the effects of climate change.
Yeah, interesting you talk about climate change, because I was talking a few days ago with the former United States ambassador to the Food and Agricultural Organization, and she focuses on food security and things like this, and she mentioned climate change and how this has just aggravated the problem to such an extent that there are hundreds of millions of people right now who are food insecure, and something like 700 million people are food insecure, and about 350 million people who are actually extremely food insecure.
So if we're not dealing with it, we're going to have lose-lose situation. If we are dealing with it together, we might have win-win and win situation. Having said that, though, the two countries, China and United States, have so much to learn from one another. You cover biodiversity for a long time, Jim. You know this because China has already become this big power of electronic vehicles, while at the same time 50 to 60% renewable energies that country is using, China is using. So one could tell there's a lot of space for cooperation, technology, and also business platforms.
21 member economies here, but that's all part of one global ecosystem.
Indeed.
Pollution, carbon in one area, a lack of biodiversity preservation in one, it's going to impact the other. And when it comes to gatherings like this and finding solutions, if you don't have the two biggest economies working together towards those solutions, it's almost impossible to really make progress.
And people to people is really something we can hold on to.
Yeah.
You all have been making great stories about how Chinese and American people are really interacting with one another. I just want to bring two short examples. One is about the flying tigers and their families in China. They had a great time, and Chinese were moved to tears. Second, about the Philadelphia Orchestra, which is still touring China right now. 50 years ago, they did a historic performance. So these kind of people-to-people ties is really bring us together.
Here in San Francisco, over the last weekend, they had a night market, reminding me of Kowloon, a night market in Chinatown here. And I was chatting with a woman who worked at one of the restaurants, second or third generation Chinese American, saying how much she was glad APEC was happening here because it's such a diverse culture with this vibrant Chinatown and such a strong history for Chinese Americans. And those connections are very real between our two countries.
It's from here.
Yeah, and
it's from the heart.
Talking about connections, I mean, just one little sidebar. I mean, for President Xi, he's been in America before. He was here as a very young man. You've done a lot of work on that, Jim. When he's been here. So, I mean, he's been to Iowa, where he initially came here a long time ago. In fact, there's a great picture which you've seen circulated around of President Xi standing alongside Golden Gate Bridge, and he's coming back to that.
Wow, there's a lot of real emotional links among the people that we are talking to over the past few days here in San Francisco. So I guess we're wrapping up for now from San Francisco. We have much more to provide to our colleagues on the live show later in the day. So back to you, Mang Mang.
Fascinating discussion there. Thank you so much, Tianwei, and we'll certainly be checking with you again in the next couple of days. Well, the upcoming meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden is highly anticipated, with many key issues set to be discussed. The summit will be only the second face-to-face meeting between the two world leaders since Biden became U.S. president. The two previously met in Bali last year for the G20 summit. And now for more on this upcoming meeting, let's go live to my colleague Asiye Namdar in Washington, D.C. Hello there, Asiye. What can you tell us about this high-profile diplomacy?
Hello to you. Well, certainly high expectations and a lot of anticipation as we get closer to that critical meeting between President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden. As you mentioned, it is set this week for Wednesday on the sidelines of the APEC Forum in San Francisco. The world's two largest economies have a long list of issues, and many are hoping for a major reset in China-U.S. relations. CGTN's Jim Spellman has more on that.
The APEC gathering in San Francisco comes amid years of friction between China and the U.S.
So we're really at a turning point where it's possible that we might be able to stabilize this relationship and stop the downward spiral, which is important bilaterally and globally as well.
Tensions over issues like the South China Sea and Taiwan remain, and military-to-military communication between the U.S. and China has been on hold for more than a year.
Without stabilizing the U.S.-China relationship, without better channels of communication, there's a real chance that the two sides could stumble into a conflict, which would not be in the interests of anyone involved.
And economic issues have taken a major toll on the relationship between the world's two largest economies. U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods dating back to the Trump administration remain in place, along with Chinese tariffs on American products enacted in response. The U.S. has also banned or placed limits on some Chinese technology companies and barred China from buying high-end semiconductors from U.S. companies. Washington cites national security concerns, but the restrictions are widely seen as a way to limit China's growth. But despite tensions running high, there has been renewed contact between Washington and Beijing in recent months, including high-level meetings.
China and the United States need to have dialogue. Not only should we resume dialogue, the dialogue should be in-depth and comprehensive so that with dialogue we can increase the understanding, reduce misunderstanding and misjudgments, constantly seek to expand common ground and pursue cooperation that will benefit both sides so that we can stabilize China-U.S. relations.
The dialogue has set the stage for a meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden on the sidelines of APEC.
We have an obligation, the United States and China, to responsibly manage the relationship, and that really in many ways starts and finishes with leader-level engagement.
The expected meeting between President Xi and President Biden could help change the direction of this important bilateral relationship. While there are areas of potential agreement, including around issues like climate change, there are also very real differences between these two countries. But some analysts say the key is effectively dealing with the differences, not eliminating them.
This is a relationship to be managed, not to be perfected.
Jim Spellman, CGTN, San Francisco, California.
Well, let's delve deeper into U.S.-China relations. CGTN's Nathan King joins me now. Nathan, you have been covering the China-U.S., the rather complicated relationship for many, many years. And I think the question so many people are asking is, can these talks really make a difference?
Well, I think we've really noticed a sea change in climate in the last year or so. I've lost count of the number of White House and other agency officials who have been to Beijing and others that have come here. And those are the ones we do know about. There's been lots of lower level contacts as well. But remember, we're at a very low bar. I can't think back even to 2001. You remember the spy plane EP3 incident, which came down in Hainan Island, and there was negotiations, the letters of the two apologies from the Bush administration. That was a low point, but because of all the other frictions in the relationship, any misunderstanding now could actually have wider consequences. And I think this is why we've seen so much contact, because there was a real feeling that things were starting to get back on track after the Bali meeting last year on the side of the G20. But then remember that weather balloon incident? Well, it was a weather balloon, by the way, despite all the hysterics here in the US. That really knocked things off track. And the public and the media here, I think, surprised the White House, the reaction, and they realized that China-US relations are too serious to be dictated by social media. So I think there was a real push there to try and get things back on track. The question is where we go from here. And, you know, relations are still very interconnected. All this idea of disconnecting the two economies is just nonsense talk, really. But what we really want to talk is, you know, a shared vision in terms of how they manage the relationship going forward. And we don't really have any trust. You know, what's the name of this APEC meeting? The motto is resilience and sustainability. Sounds good, but it also sounds a bit like the host's idea of a small yard and tall fence when it comes to restricting China. And this is the one big thing that I think is really important here, as obviously all the attention is going to be on this meeting between President Xi and President Biden, but there are 21 economies involved, and they really feel that they want this relationship back on track. You know, these summits are full of acronyms, aren't they? APEC being one of them. And I heard another one the other day, which was do much, which is do not make us choose. And that's where the rest of the Asian economies want to be. They want to see a sound footing from these two big powers, these two economic heavyweights, that doesn't spill over militarily or lead to any misunderstandings, and also means that everyone can trade with everyone else. But, you know, in this post-COVID era, in this worry about supply chains, in this era of patchy growth, this may be a very difficult deliverable indeed.
Well, we shall see. Nathan King, thank you very much. Now, Robert Hormats, former U.S. Undersecretary of State, says we could see better relations after the Xi-Biden meeting. He also says recent high-level visits between Washington and Beijing that both Jim and Nathan talked about helped set the stage.
The fact that there have been these cabinet visits by American cabinet members of high level to China, and the Chinese foreign minister came here to Washington and had numerous talks and a number of conversations with high-level Americans, including the president, is a signal that both sides understand that while there are major differences between them, there is also a need to manage those differences in a constructive way, in a peaceful way, in a mutually beneficial way, and that there are several issues that affect both countries and the world that require the support of the heads of state and the initiatives of the heads of state to move forward on. Cooperation on health issues is important. Cooperation on environmental issues is important. The world has a number of financial challenges in many parts of the world. Last time, the United States and China, 2008, cooperated on those. So I think there are ways of, first of all, managing the current differences and divisions, but also ways of identifying new areas where both sides can cooperate to a greater degree. And that, as we know from the past, I started going to China during the Nixon administration when I worked for Kissinger. I learned one thing, and that is things happen between China and the U.S. that would not happen unless the two heads of state can initiate them and move them forward and give them the kind of domestic support that they need and the international support they need.
And our thanks to Robert Hormats. Now, although relations have been strained, the world's two largest economies are still doing business together and at record levels. Owen Fairclough with that part of the story.
Harvesting crops in America's Midwest to meet China's growing appetite for commodities such as soybeans. After a record 2022, U.S. soybean exports had dropped off somewhat, partly due to competition from Brazil. But last week, China made its single biggest purchase of soybeans for 3 months. Good timing for U.S. officials visiting China's International Import Expo.
China is a good market for U.S. agriculture products. It's our top market. We think it can be even better. We see great growth potential here.
But there are unresolved trade tensions hanging over from former President Donald Trump. He imposed duties on hundreds of billions of dollars of Chinese imports after accusing Beijing of unfair trade practices. China retaliated with tariffs on a smaller scale before the two sides reached a deal for Beijing to import more U.S. goods to redress a trade imbalance, partly reflected in those agricultural exports. But under the Biden administration, diplomatic relations sank amid unresolved trade arguments before both sides reconciled, though Washington has maintained many of the Trump-era tariffs. Yet the U.S. government's own accountants have previously warned that these kinds of tariffs backfire by reducing household income. China has expressed its concern over U.S. sanctions against Chinese companies, two-way investment restrictions, export controls, and tariffs against Beijing, asking the U.S. to respond with concrete actions. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
Now, a multi-billion-dollar company near Chicago has a big stake in China-U.S. trade. The Wangshan America Corporation has even helped save American businesses and jobs. CGTN's Dan Williams met with the owner and is here to tell us more about that conversation. Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. As we've been hearing there, of course, trade between the US and China is a real key pillar of this relationship. And as we heard there as well, of course, we have seen that being marked by volatility and tensions over the last few years. But earlier, I did catch up with Pin Ni. As you say, he's the president of the Wangshan America Corporation, who's been watching these developments since he set this company up back in 1994 very closely. And this is what he had to say about the potential of this meeting between President Xi and Joe Biden this week, and the hope that he has that these trade relations can be worked out in the near future.
Pin Ni busily inspects his warehouse.
But we have too many of those.
Wangshan America Corporation, based in Elgin, Illinois, near Chicago, is an incredible success story. In 1994, Pin Ni founded the company with an initial $20,000 investment. Since then, it has grown to become a $4 billion conglomerate with interests in auto parts, clean energy, private equity, and real estate. Over the years, Pin Ni has watched the ebb and flow of relations between the US and China.
Can you bring it over?
Although in recent times, that relationship has been characterized by tensions.
Obviously, it is very challenging. But I call there's a two trade relation, right? One is a true business trade relation. The logic has not changed. However, on top of that, there is another layer of the trade relationship. This is a political trade relationship. That is absolutely terrible. That has caused, a lot of loss for people on both sides.
A buzzword among US policymakers in recent months is that of de-risking, a push to mitigate the vulnerabilities posed by shaky economic ties between the US and China. The move appears to be a step away from decoupling, implying efforts to curb risks while avoiding a clean break. But Pin Ni is among those who believe, in the end, the markets will decide.
I don't think anybody can stop globalization. Many people can try to slow it down, but at the end, the globalization is going to move forward. Because the anti-globalization, the cost will be too high.
Despite recent tensions, Chinese companies still invested more than $28 billion into the US last year. Although that's down from the high of nearly $39 billion in 2019, it's about double the amount Chinese firms invested in the US in 2015.
Added to that, the two-way trade between the two countries last year was worth almost $700 billion, a record high.
I do have a hope. The hope is that the leaders on both sides can be rational, can be professional, can be open-minded, can focus on the people's benefit from these two countries. If they do that, I'm confident both sides can find a way to move forward.
There will be many business leaders around the world who'll be watching the meeting between the US and Chinese presidents very closely. Dan Williams, CGTN, Chicago.
With more now on China-U.S. relations, let me turn to Saurabh Gupta. He's a senior Asia-Pacific International Relations Policy Specialist at the Institute of China-America Studies. Saurabh, you and I have discussed the volatile relationship between China and the U.S. a number of times. What is your takeaway as you look at these discussions set for tomorrow? Do you have hopes that they can narrow some of the differences or at least start the dialogue, if you will?
Oh, yes, I do have hope. I think they've made actually quite a lot of good progress since their Bali meeting exactly a year back, where they sought to begin the process of stabilization. That process got kicked back a little bit because of the balloon incident, but it's just a measure of how much both sides were interested in the Bali consensus on stabilization, that we had these flurry and exchanges of cabinet level ministers going to Beijing, and also some Chinese cabinet level ministers coming out here.
Saurabh, what do you think?
See, at this point of time.
Go ahead. I interrupted you. Apologies.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, what I was basically going towards was, they are trying to set a broad guiding principles, a broad strategic framework, but and they're moving slowly, but gradually, but successfully in that direction. But more importantly, while they're doing that part of setting this broader framework, they're also trying to harvest smaller deliverables, and I'm expecting certain deliverables coming out of the meeting between President Xi and President Biden. So on both fronts, in terms of setting up the big picture, as well as in trying to reach some small agreements, I think there has been forward progress.
So what does each side, Saurabh, hope to gain from these discussions? If you're China, what kind of assurances are you trying to get from the United States? And if you're the United States, what kind of assurances do you want to get from Beijing?
This is one area where they've talked of right at Bali last year, and even before in their virtual conversations, where they're trying to set certain assurances to the other party. Now, many of these assurances are macro assurances. The United States is saying, hey, we are not out to contain you. Our alliances are not for containment purposes. We are still sticking with our one China policy. We don't want to subvert the Communist Party in China. And China, on the other hand, is saying to the U.S., we're not trying to displace you in the international system. We're not trying to interfere in your domestic processes. Now, the point is, because there's a lack of trust, that these assurances are not entirely believed by the other side, but they are being communicated regularly at the heads of state level. And my view would be is, rather than incessantly parse these assurances, let both sides then work, let their conduct reflect what they say, and in that process there will be an easing of tensions, and they will be able to create what I was saying about those guiding principles which will guide the relationship even in this age of strategic competition. Over and above that, as I said, there are certain deliverables they're looking at in the area of AI, in there regarding fentanyl, with regard to restarting mill communications. So these just help provide a little bit of buffer, a little bit of strength to ensure that the whole process is generally moving in the right direction.
And Saurabh, the stakes are clearly very high. These are the two largest economies in the world, and what happens between these two countries has such far-reaching, much wider implications around the world, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, bilaterally, regionally, internationally, and that's why there will be conversations related to regional politics. There's already been working group meetings on maritime issues and on other regional issues where they talk Korea, where they'll talk related to the differing viewpoints on Taiwan with regard to the South China Sea. But also the large, big issues will be talked about in terms of Russia, Ukraine, in terms of Gaza, Hamas, Israel, in terms of debt distress in developing countries, in terms of macroeconomic stability. And that's why it's important that there is confidence built among the two leaders, that they can trust each other. There is a baseline of trust, but still, because so much has happened in the relationship, it's not easy to hark back to that earlier trust that they had. And remember, next year is a presidential election here, and China will be raked over the coals. And so we are trying to look at minimum if the relationship can at least be in a holding pattern, so that come 2025, and if Mr. Biden is elected, that could be a jumping off point to really deepen this process of stabilization. But I know we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
No, that's okay, but you make a very good point, because U.S. domestic politics clearly plays a role in all of this as well. Saurabh Gupta, thank you very much. And that's it from me from Washington. Back to our colleagues in Beijing.
Thanks so much, Asiye. Apparently, the stage has been set and the red carpet is being rolled out. Our reporter Juju talked to residents in San Francisco on their expectations for the upcoming China-U.S. Leaders Meeting at the APEC Summit. Take a listen.
I think it's great that they're willing to cooperate like that. I think there's a lot to get from China. They're our technology is subpar at this point, so I definitely think to gain or to maximize as much as possible on that.
I know that the U.S. Uses a lot of resources from China, so I believe like just that collaboration in general should be utilized a lot more, especially with technology.
I think anytime the two countries can communicate, it's going to help business for both countries. I'm a resident of San Francisco, and obviously we have a wonderful, vibrant Chinese community here. And I think anything that raises up San Francisco's visibility and the Chinese community is very positive.
I hope that they can realize what they are missing and that they can collaborate with China. We have a lot of problems in this country, you know, and so I think it would be great if they really decide to collaborate with China and stop this tension.
I think it's great that we're talking. It's the technology of the future, so it really needs to be worked out now how we're dealing with all that stuff. So I think it's great that we're having conversations about it.
And now let's get some more analysis, and we're pleased to be joined here in the studio by Professor Liu Baozheng. He's Dean of the Center for International Business Ethics at the University of International Business and Economics. Great to have you with us, Professor. Yes. So certainly this will be the second face-to-face between the two presidents, and it will be President Xi Jinping's first trip to American soil since 2017. It's been 6 years. A lot has happened since that, and a lot has happened over the course of the past year since the two presidents last met in Bali. What will be some of the items topping the list of concerns for the two leaders?
Well, I think the whole world is really focusing their eyes on what is really on the list. I think one key issue would be the geopolitical issues that is going on because they are supposed to be shouldering higher responsibility towards, say, the hungry people in Africa because of this disruption of the food supply, etc. And of course, the confrontation still going on between Russia and Ukraine, and now Israel and Hamas against Hamas, etc. And the other would be the key is still economic cooperation, because after years of twisting arms, I should say, from the Trump administration, the interdependence between China and the United States in terms of economic cooperation on trade and investment, they are really inevitable, and so they cannot really be severed by any type of political maneuverability. So now how we can really reset the right direction and framework that we can really continue to work with, and trying to reduce some of the unnecessary barriers on the issues that are really not really involved in sort of national security or things of that nature, so that people and business can really see the benefit of working together. And the other would be, some of the global issues like climate change issues, public health issues, and both sides would like to see some assurances over their key concerns from the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this stakes are high right now, and so is anticipation for the summit. But then considering the volatility in bilateral relations as well as uncertainty in world peace and development, are you hopeful of a long list of deliverables, or are we looking at, some of the few agreements between the two?
Well, I do not feel so optimistic to have immediate deliverables, but I am optimistic in the way that they're going to set the right direction. And because we have the foundation work that has been laid through the continued visits and also resumed dialogues on a number of issues, from top dignitaries and to the general people. And we can see that there are still nearly 300,000 Chinese students studying in the United States. And now there is also resumption of more of the direct flights between China and the United States, and we are seeing more tourism from the United States. So gradually, things is going to warm up. So therefore, as long as we are in the right direction and with all the foundations laid out, we are not really very far from a more desirable result. So at least it is really a good restarting point, and let's see that more of the social circles, more of the business circles needs to be recalibrated to be able to achieve a more desired outcome.
Certainly there will be wide-ranging discussions, and President Xi Jinping said last year during their Bali meeting that China and U.S. relations should be examined, viewed and handled in the larger context in which the world is at a major inflection point in history. So what does it mean to really look at this relationship in this broader international context?
Well, one is how do we see global order? Over 70 years after the Cold War, and also the situation has really changed quite a lot, and the U.S. Dominance is not really there, despite of the their best wishes. So therefore, there needs to be a better way to accommodate more diversity in the political agenda on global issues. And China is also, rising to be a superpower. So this is really the fact. And how these two countries can really, coexist without really trying to knock down the other. So this is something that's key, because any type of negative relationship between these two countries can really have a negative spillover over a number of global issues, and over then their neighbors, and over the workers, etc. So how we can really guardrail, against some of the confrontations. So this is, I think, that rather crucial to both of the countries and also the world. And the other is that because actually the globalization, despite of the fragmentation, the trajectory, it is still going on. And how we can really defend the multilateral trading platform, and how we can really abide by the rules, and so that we can really smooth some of the bugs that are in the way of investment, and further collaboration, not only between these two countries, but also to work with many other countries combined, because right now investment and trade is really global. So it's not only something that's across the Pacific. It could be touching around the whole world. And also about alliance. So China is still maintaining a policy of non-alliance, and China doesn't really bother the forging alliance by the United States, but not really against China. So to team what is named as democracy group versus autocracy group, and this is really a very old-fashioned Cold War mentality. So I think a lot of the ideology work and a lot of strategic work will be also handled, so that that can be followed up with more, for example, the dialogue at the minister levels, dialogue at the functional levels, and on the implementation levels, and also on the judicial level. And so this, I do really feel that we have a way to address this issue, because after all, after we can recall when Richard Nixon was in China, China was totally a mystery to the United States, and vice versa, and with so much high understanding, the understanding, and so much of the interconnectivity today. So the most difficult time is over. So we are really looking forward to a more brighter future
Yeah, certainly China is a very much different country than what it was 51 years ago when Richard Nixon paid that visit. And then, of course, so was the world's understanding of it. And then on the U.S. side, President Biden also said last year that the U.S. has no intention to decouple from China, to halt China's economic development, or to contain China. And, you know, trade and economy is such a big pillar of bilateral relationship. So many business leaders from U.S. paid visits to China over the past year. Can the U.S. deliver on these promises, and what are some of the challenges during this process?
Well, I think these rhetorics are really subject to further scrutiny over the definition. For example, refusing to sell, does it really mean containment? And so and also, for example, to team with a third country to really through coercion or persuasion to boycott, another country that they don't like. Is it really something that is a hegemonism? So, these are really issues that needs to be addressed. And I think on top of the agenda, how national security can be further defined and can further be guardrailed, because you may talk about the high-end chips are really concerned with national security, but what about garments and boots that could also possibly be supplied to the militaries? So therefore, overstretching some of the conceptual framework can really derail the working relationship between these two countries, and also it can create a lot of confusion among the business people. So right now, over the Taiwan issue, what is really the key to defend the three communique, so that it is the one China is the domestic affairs that is really left for the Chinese to resolve, and then the military-wise. So non-aggression is something that both sides really agree, and there should be a continued military dialogue. But some of the bugs are still there at no fault of China. So these are really there to call on a realistic check of the core issues that are really stumbling the further improvement of the bilateral relationship, so that we can really come with a better level of trust building and sincerity, and also clarity in terms of the way that we can really work forward. And now, a lot of people are talking about, small yard and higher fences, but how small is this yard to contain the trade and investment and the high technology in particular, and how high could be the fence? So with more of the unpredictability produced, and that's really going to sever the resilience of the bilateral relationship, both on the conception level, business level, and also technical level.
And you talked about trust building, Professor Liu. We've seen high-level communication between the two sides. Antony Blinken's visit, and then Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit, which is followed by Vice Premier He Lifeng and U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, the meeting between the two. What purpose do these high-level exchanges serve? Are they paving the way, setting the stage for this high-level summit between the two presidents, or are there more purposes to it?
I think the very basic one is to remind that we are all humans. So nothing can really replace the handshake between people in terms of trust building. And despite of all the fancy communication programs, so talking across the screen is not there to replace the talking face-to-face. And so we do see actually from the April of this year, there has been a lot more warming up between the China and the United States, simply because more of the people are really getting activated to meet each other and shake hands with each other. So, and of course, the ballast or the pillar is still the economic and trade relationship. So therefore, at least now we need to clarify, okay, how does it really, over the years, how does it really impact the people and the business community? And will the tariff really serve the purpose to make China capitulate? So right now, very obviously, it's really a failure one. It's it has been much of the injury, produced to sever some of the problems in the American households, and also some Chinese people, Chinese businesses are also suffering from this sort of trade war. So can there be a sort of alleviation in the tariff? So this is something that is highly expected. And now, in terms of the containment in the high-end technology, actually, when I talk with a number of U.S. tech firms, particularly those, the R&D firms, losing the China market as a big buyer, because China buys, nearly 300 billion worth of chips. So this is far more worse than all the soybeans of 100 million metric tons with one box of chips. So therefore, without really, gaining the right type of loop between marketization and commercialization versus R&D, merely rely on the token of support from the federal government, it doesn't really work. So therefore, many of the R&D work are really looking forward to see a more relaxation in that regard. And actually, these countries, if they really wanted to show responsibility for the future generations, so technological cooperation that are very much related with human health, because right now we are going to see a number of breakthroughs on the doorstep dealing with certain types of the cancer, etc., and also dealing with the different mutations of pandemic. So we do really need to work together. And also the other is really the climate change, because we realize that we live on a very small planet, which is the Mother Earth. So how we can really work together in terms of industry policy, in terms of environmental control, in terms of the shared and common responsibility, and also in terms of the exchange as how we can really deal more of the carbon dioxide emissions. So these are really something that's calls on solid agreement and solid understanding instead of simply talking into the air with all the fancy political rhetorics.
Climate change could be one of the easier and very important handles of cooperation between the two sides. Special Climate Envoy John Kerry was here, and then the climate cooperation was also high on the agenda for California Governor Gavin Newsom's visit here in China. So China, as we know, has very ambitious climate goals, carbon peak and carbon neutrality. But how could China really align those climate goals and to contribute further to the world's climate goals?
Well, that's a very difficult task, because China is still a developing country, and economic growth at a reasonable level is really still the main goal for us. And that also means we have to compromise some of the environmental issues. So therefore, we also bargain with the global community on the shared but differentiated responsibility of the developing country. And I think more importantly is that China is a manufacturing house for the whole world. And see that many of those electronic gadgets, many of those garments and also petrochemicals, they are handled in China, but with the foreign investment from multinational companies, because the Europe and North America, they have tightened environmental control rules. So if you really wanted to utilize the Chinese soil, the Chinese resources, Chinese cheaper labor, and there also needs to be a better understanding of the tough issues for China to deal with the carbon reduction. So now, and of course, we set a very stringent goal on the carbon peaking and the carbon neutrality, and that needs to be realized step by step. And actually, we have seen huge improvements in that regard. Not only we see less smog in Beijing, but also we can see that there are far less smokestack all around China. Not only that, we are really developing all the clean energy and from solar to hydropower and to build nuclear power. And now the e-vehicles are really, they're getting far more popularity, and policy are there to support. And we are also reactivating on a larger scale on the carbon trading between China and the rest of the world, and also within China, etc., so that those who really produce carbon will pay the right due to those people who really save resources and help the environment.
Yeah, I really want to add that the northeast provinces, the coldest provinces in China, are really shifting to cleaner energy in their winter heating, and that will certainly help make a difference as well.
Actually, my hometown is in Hebei province, and actually I visited my hometown during the Chinese National Day, which is October, and I was really surprised that every household had a gas supply, and this is really something that I have never experienced. Actually, people have never experienced over the entire Chinese history, and that's also beaten my imagination, because that brings my childhood memory by burning all the stocks and riding on cars, etc. So yeah. All over China, the actually gas utility is getting on top of the agenda, and now that is why we work closely on the energy supplies. So from the Gulf countries, and also very fairly, we will also work with Russia on the gas supply, and because that's a responsible way. Aside from their, the military or special operation, so people still need to work, and people still need to pay responsibility to the environment. So that's really where China stands. So it's not really a sort of black and white and virtuous or vicious type of choice. And now the U.S. would like to see China is getting, a very clear-cut stand. If I don't like you, then no business. Actually, this is really a sort of the extreme way that can really bring harm to the management of relationship, and also to the to build more trust between the countries.
Yeah, I'd really want to get your expertise on trade and economy, because we know President Xi Jinping will be attending this CEO summit, the APEC CEO summit, and business leaders will have this opportunity to dine with President Xi. What kind of significance does this kind of state and business interaction hold, and just how can they contribute to the advancing of ties?
Well, today, actually, business, despite of all the liberalization of global trade, is still very much subject to the political climate the countries really set forth. So many people that I have dialogue with who are engaged in global business, not only between China and the United States, they are also very much eager to see.
Professor Liu, let me just interrupt you here because we have latest. Chinese President Xi Jinping has just arrived in San Francisco to attend a China-U.S. summit, as well as the 30th APEC Economic Leaders Meeting. And now let's get back to Professor Liu here. Sorry, I interrupted you just now.
No problem. So, because, the business circle who are not only engaging in the bilateral trade between China and the United States are eager to hear that there's going to be more of managed the competition between these two countries, but also they are also working with on the Belt and Road programs and on the European programs, etc. They are also very much eager to see that how this geopolitical issues can be better understood, if not really resolved, so that they can have a more predictable future in the decision-making process. And then what would be the opportunities that can be unlocked for those businesses? For example, for green energy transition, and what would be those big projects they can really participate in terms of the investment into the funds, in terms of the active deployment of specific projects, etc. And then can there be a trim over the hanging tariff over there, because all the reshaping of supply chain is not really automatically handled. It's, some of them are really manipulated by the political agenda in the White House or with some other the political stations. So so to really for example, to reallocate assembly line, that's going to be a large sinking cost. That's to be there, and then how those type of regional integration program is going to fare to those business circles. For example, people are happy. I talk with the RCEP because they really enjoy the reduction of the tariff. And what about the Indo-Pacific economic framework? And so, because right now the U.S. is really making a lot of noise on that, but they are not really coming up with the specific rules, and so that people could not really foresee what is really lying ahead, both at the national level and also at the business level. So these are really the issues that the state can really influence business and also consumption.
Right, and the American business community is keen to watch what kind of message President Xi Jinping is bringing. And of course, China has seen a decline in foreign direct investment. Will this trip to the U.S. bring more vitality to China's much needed foreign investment?
I think now investment is like water. It will flow to those who really welcome them. So I think the decline has much to do with the Chinese own domestic issues. And one reason is that, the 3 years of pandemic really, and also the very tough control, zero tolerance really spooked a lot of businesses, despite of all the legitimate concern over the public health issues. And the other is that China is in a swift transformation because those labor-intensive, resource-intensive industries should be gradually phased out. So, and because business they also have an inertia. They say, oh, China still, welcome those industries, those investments. So it's no longer so. So the business also needs to adapt to the new changes of the Chinese policy. And also China does also welcome more foreign investment to go to the middle area and the western part of China. And Chinese people, and particularly those local governments and local business community, needs to do a better work to really persuade and to give a more rosy picture to those potential investors over there. And right now, of course, it does mean that some of the political or maneuvers can really deter some of the investment. For example, in those the small yard and high fence arena in terms of semiconductors in China, and that's going to be hurt. But in the meantime, actually, that means China will have to beef up more of its own investment to support such sort of industries, and in many other ways. So money will be gathered, to support those, the new products, new innovation that really enjoy a huge potential for commercial success.
Sure. And Professor, as you mentioned just now, the 21 member economies of the APEC belong to different groupings. They cooperate under different frameworks, so certainly there will be overlapping and sometimes even conflicts of interest. Do you see synergy between their different frameworks, or how could they really coordinate their development strategies?
Well, definitely. So nobody wants war. And actually, many business leaders, they talk, the most devastating one would be a war. So right now, we do not really see a good reason to have a war in this Asian Pacific region, but we can see there is further escalation of military budgets, and also the more of the military vehicles are really sailing around or flying around, etc. So that's rather spooky to the business people, and so therefore regional stability and regional peace is something that everyone really wants. And second, the type of economic and trade rules that we need to follow with. So TPP was really something that's great to begin with, to build a more harmonized the rules for investment and trade, but the U.S. At the last minute, they really put out. So now the CPTPP is working at a low key. And now RCEP is really working actually more effectively in that regard by accommodating differences between different countries, but with very steady agenda to reduce tariff and to remove more of the non-tariff barriers, for those 14 member countries. And so with China, I mean. So right now, China is also seeking membership with the CPTPP, but that can also help for China to really do more of the housekeeping work, to streamline some of the policies that are not really in compliance. But we are working on it. And then, of course, every country has their own agenda. The one thing that is really hanging in the air is that when the two elephants are fighting with each other between China and the United States, ASEAN countries will be spooked. So therefore, and also they may also face the pressure of choosing sides, particularly by the U.S. Side. So,
exactly. That's perhaps why there are voices from within the APEC member economies. Their concern is that do not make us choose.
That's right.
Yeah. Is that a reasonable concern?
I think that's not only a reasonable concern, but also a fair request, because countries, big or small, weak or strong, they have their own sovereign supremacy, and they decide their own fate, and they can really team with another country, and they can also be independently operating their own economy, their own political agenda, etc. So therefore, this is unfair for them to really face the choice of different sides. So, and now only by really having the right type of rules and also making the right commitment and gather the resources to deliver the commitment, and then people can really be more settled over their expectation between the states, and so that they can really work together more effectively, and eventually that's going to benefit the whole world.
As their war some great deal of volatility is going on in bilateral relations. It seems that one aspect that hasn't stopped is people-to-people exchanges. For example, we've seen the art troops, the Philadelphia Orchestra and the American Ballet Theater paying visits to China, and also the Flying Tigers, as we mentioned. So why are people-to-people exchanges so important for bilateral relations? And how can they contribute when perhaps everything else goes wrong?
Well, the stage for collaboration is not only the stardom of those politicians, but eventually people's contact and people's exchange and people's collaboration is really the end goal for those even political work and diplomatic work. So therefore, this is really the key. We do see that there's the increasing number of students from all over the world who come to China, and the U.S. really recently the U.S. ambassador in China, Mr. Burns, he also mentioned that we do need to encourage more of the U.S. students to come to China. And then, business people, they are like bees to calibrate different flowers. And so they do not only bring the utility in terms of goods and service, they also bring information and make people more informed, because we do see that there are a number of media work and there is a number of political work that are trying to distort some of the true pictures of different localities across the countries. So, to really bring people the right type of information to get them to get them down to really make a more informed decision as where to visit, where to invest. And this is also something that's important, so that they can really make their own independent and voluntary choices. And then, the academically. So right now, there's more of the stumbles in identifying certain of the sensitive issues that we need to touch upon. So academic freedom also needs to be given, so that we can really move forward in seeing a larger picture and seeing the picture actually lying ahead of us, because this is really the work not only for scientific research, but also for liberal art research.
Sure. This is certainly a highly anticipated meeting between the two presidents, and the world is now watching. They're actually hoping that the meeting between President Xi and Biden will bring China-U.S. relations back onto the right track. What do you think would take for that to happen?
Well, one is the understanding of the differences. The efforts to eliminate difference will be very much frugal. So therefore, accept those differences and build a better understanding of those differences on which we can really shape trust and respect with each other, so that we can really, coexist together. So trying to introduce one boilerplate around the world is something that is failed time and again from the United States in terms of the political construct, in terms of the economic model. So this is something that I think more of the U.S. politicians, from White House to some of the cabinet members, they begin to realize further. So, and then, see what really people really want. It's not really the political ego that really matters, because if they are not really there to cater to the interest of individual households, individual students, individual business people, then they are not really responsible politicians anymore. So, and right now we can see that in Francisco, they gather so many of the business leaders to really raise their voice. What are you guys up to? So, they are also there to remind them who are really paying the tax, to support their job, to support their operation. And so and then, because business is really the fertilizer soil, for economic growth and also for people exchange, and also bring people's, the right type of utility and comfort. And so therefore, to respect the choice of business, right at the forum is something that they really need to show.
People are expecting to see perhaps a shift in tone. And one recent development as this diplomacy unfolds is that the 6th China International Import Expo, the CIIE, which was held in Shanghai earlier this month. And it was the first time that the United States is actually sending an official delegation to the expo and set up an official pavilion there to exhibit their agricultural products, food, for example. So in light of this weakened China-U.S. relations, would you say that this also signifies a positive turn in the two countries' economic and trade relations?
Yeah, definitely. I see far more silver lining between these two countries, and it's not only the big event like the Shanghai Import Expo, but on daily basis, we see far better communication, and also we see that our students are ordering more from the United States in terms of all the fancy toys or books, etc. And there is a further relaxation in terms of the import procedures from the United States. So in terms of the custom house, the quality inspection program, and we can also see over all the macromedia, the level of sarcasm, skepticism is on a very rapid reduction, actually, when President Xi announced that he's going to attend this meeting. So, with that, I think with all the good foundations that's being laid out, it's very easy, really, to come up to speed in terms of the reconnection and rebuilding. And I hope, right away that actually that many people are really expecting that there could be more of the direct flights that can be resumed, because before the pandemic, 340 direct flights on a weekly basis. Now, there's incremental increase, but we do see that it's going to be a dramatic increase, at least, close to the pre-pandemic level, so that people can really travel more easily and more comfortably.
Sure. Well, Professor, now let's also hear from our reporter Zhao Yunfei. He's standing by for us live at the airport in San Francisco, and he's been following the development there very closely. Yunfei?
Mama, I believe President Xi's aircraft have just landed at the San Francisco International Airport. It's right behind me. You can see his airplane is just taxiing and about to stop over here at this spot. Now, so this is believed to be Chinese President Xi's aircraft, and he has just landed at about 10 or 20 minutes ago here at the airport. So basically, this is a very highly anticipated visit by the Chinese president. There's a huge presence of media outlets here at the San Francisco International Outlet, and certainly the security has geared up as the Chinese president is here, as well as the upcoming APEC meetings. So during President Xi's visit, he's expected to meet with his U.S. counterpart, Joe Biden, and as well as attending the APEC meeting or attending a series of events during the APEC week. Now, this is a meeting that local people are highly anticipating and expected to bring a new layer of friendship or new development to the China-U.S. ties. Now, the last time President Xi met with Joe Biden face-to-face was last year, similarly at this time in Indonesia's Bali on the sidelines of G20. And though the outcomes of last times was pretty well, however, during the second half of last year, the first half of last year, this relationship between the two countries were at strain. But later on, the relationship gets better as there were frequent visits by officials and people-to-people exchanges at all levels. And that really paves the way for the president's visit, as well as the meeting between the president of the two biggest economies of the world. So I believe that now from what I see over here, I guess the President Xi is about to come out from the aircraft, and we'll keep watching that for you, Mama.
Yunfei, we've been waiting for that moment for a long time. I really want to ask you, because you are the one who's there to confirm a lot of information for us. Who will be there to greet the Chinese president?
Yes, I will be there. And I mean, oh, you asked about who will be there. Okay, so what we know at this moment, Janet Yellen may be here because at this scene, we don't see any U.S. official at this moment, but what we know at this moment, Janet Yellen may be here, and the California Governor Newsom may be here. I mean, both of the two figures are very iconic, especially for Governor Newsom, because he just paid a very friendly visit to China, and then there were so many outcomes, and especially he was when he was in China, he focused a lot on the the two countries' cooperation in sustainable development, and that is also very important because eco-friendly, achieving zero carbon emission, I mean, protecting the earth, that could be one of the very few common ground that China and the United States are reaching at this moment. But I spoke with a lot of the experts, and especially the experts in the fields of energy, and they told us that at least this is the starting point for the two countries, especially the two leaders, look for a common ground. So for sure, the U.S. delegations will be there, as well as the Chinese side will also be there to greet with the Chinese president.
Thank you so much, Yunfei, for giving us that update from the airport in San Francisco, and that certainly is a highly significant visit, Zhao Yunfei, for us there. Well, as we just talked about California Governor Gavin Newsom's visit to China, Professor Liu, I want to ask you this. He had really high-level reception from Chinese officials. How do you perceive the potentials of subnational cooperation between China and the U.S.?
Actually, that's a very good question, because China entered into many sister city or sister states relationship with all over the world. Actually, so far as I remember, California has like sister city relationship or twin brother relationship with around 7 places in China. And he toured around, first of all, to enhance the friendship, but more importantly is really to sell his glamour in boosting the environmental the quality over there. And California is known, first of all, for the environmental improvements over there, and they are very strong proponent for the new energy, and they also work with the different schools in with California University to really to turn out a lot of the amazing result in scientific research to help the environment, to monitor the environment and improve the energy, etc. So that's the prop piece of Newsom, and he really wanted to show to China. And actually, we can really work more closely on that regard, which is really to address the joint concerns of the environment. And the other is that California has a very vibrant and dynamic Chinese community, so therefore he does need this constituency to support his political career. And so because the Chinese community are really having a stronger influence over there, and they also have a stronger tie with China in terms of trade and other clan type of relationship. So then because the United States is really arranged on a federal basis. So therefore, the different states have more of the independent decision-making power. So therefore, we work with the federal government, and we also choose to work with different states and even different counties. And so this is something that's the right type of approach that's more catered to the local people, and also it could be easier to handle, and because there's going to be less political intervention into those areas.
Professor, I want to ask you about the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting, which President Xi Jinping and other world leaders will be attending. The theme of this year's forum is creating a resilient and sustainable future for all. What are your interpretation into this subject?
Well, economy is really shown not really by politicians but also by business people. So particularly for those small and medium-sized businesses and from the private sector. So therefore, we have gone through difficult times in the pandemic. And it seems that the way I see it, the state has played beyond their role, really to intervene in the market. Well, during special circumstances. Now, when situation gets more normalized, so more of the private sectors needs to come up to make more of their own decision. But of course, they need to be given a better confidence in their investment and also in the judicial legislative circle, so that they have the right type of rules to follow and making the right type of decisions. Now, they actually, when both of these, China and United States, are talking about more of the national security issue, that's going to really penetrating into the business dealings. So how these, two governments actually with different ministries can give a more convincing the explanation of how to address, for example, information security and even espionage work, so that business will not really be spooked into, tapping into areas of corporations that does not really involve national security. So, the other is that we need also to build a better understanding into the legislative and the judicial circle, so that we to address some of the common concerns like intellectual property protection, like money laundering work, and anti-drug trafficking work.
Sure. Well, economies are so intertwined nowadays in the international community. How do you think APEC can work to help make the region more interconnected and inclusive in their future development?
Yeah, I think that's really the main theme for all along, because that's why it's called APEC. There is the economy, which is really the mainstay over there. So the one is that to provide a safe and peaceful environment.
Professor Liu, we are now watching live signal from San Francisco, where Chinese President Xi Jinping has just stepped out of his cabin of his airplane, and this marks the beginning of his visit to the United States. He's here to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden, as well as to attend the 30th APEC Economic Leaders Meeting. And anticipation is high that this will mark a significant shift in tone in bilateral relations, and the summit between the leaders of the two countries will be their second face-to-face meeting as presidents of their countries. And this will also be the first time that President Xi Jinping travels to American soil since 2017. And as we could see right there, he's being greeted by California Governor Gavin Newsom, who paid a visit to China late October. And President Xi Jinping is scheduled to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden on Wednesday, and he will also be attending the APEC Leaders Meeting, the APEC CEO Summit, where business leaders will have this opportunity to talk to President Xi. So certainly there's a long list of priorities for the two presidents, and they will be ironing out some of the thorny issues in bilateral relations and trying to make consensus, some agreement, and some tangible deliverables in their relations going forward. And this will be the second meeting between the two presidents. They last met in Bali in Indonesia about a year ago. So President Xi will be attending the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting and deliver a speech to elaborate on China's major propositions concerning Asia-Pacific cooperation and regional and global economic growth. And President Xi's attendance is thought to be a reflection of the great importance China attaches to Asia-Pacific cooperation. And there will be wide-ranging discussions on the bilateral front, and also bilateral relationship will be examined in a wider global context. And China says there's a widely shared expectation for the Asia-Pacific to remain an economic engine that leads global growth. Trade and economy, as we know, is still the pillar of bilateral relations. And ahead of President Xi's visit, China's foreign ministry says the two leaders will discuss fundamental issues affecting China-U.S. relations. President Xi and President Biden will also hold in-depth discussions on strategic and overall matters concerning China-U.S. relations, as well as key issues relating to global peace and development. So while the two leaders met in Bali last year, they exchanged views on matters of strategic importance. And they've agreed to put bilateral ties back on the right track and maintain a constructive relationship. There has been some volatility going on in bilateral relations, but then we've seen frequent high-level exchanges between the two sides in the past year, especially in the past few months. And the stage has been set for the Chinese president. San Francisco is welcoming in a very important guest, and it will also be welcoming in other world leaders attending the 30th APEC Leaders Economic Meeting. So, Professor Liu, we talked about the anticipation for President Xi Jinping's visit there, and it's interesting. I was doing some reading, and then some residents in California, they were saying that the government is making the streets look nicer for the president, and that to some extent shows the degree of importance that the local government is giving to this visit.
Yeah, of course. I think now courtesy or rituals is something that is really of the top value of the Chinese, particularly on diplomacy, and it is really a learning process from the United States. They learn that how really they can receive the very important guests over there. And I think that has a lot to do with the Chinese community, because they are also disseminating a lot more of the Chinese way of life and Chinese way of understanding relationship in the entire California over there. And if you talk with people, I like that place because it's so much diverse, and also it's very safe over there. And now it is really a special occasion to have a dusting campaign. And the U.S. people also need to have a better environment and better outlook to receive so many guests over there, because one realistic issue in California is that they are also there to attract more foreign investment and also foreign talents to participate in the research and development for that state. So if you give them a very ugly look, and then that's not going to be beneficial to the investment environment over there, particularly because there's a lot more of the heavyweight, the business people that gather over there. I think this is really a good occasion for them to have a dusting campaign.
Yeah, it's interesting to see those, smaller, the finer details besides the diplomatic protocols there. And now, Professor Liu, let's also hear again from our reporter Zhao Yunfei. He's been witnessing that arrival moment of President Xi Jinping's airplane in Fei. So yeah, it was certainly a very highly anticipated meeting. That was the start of this visit.
Maman, a very well-planned welcome ceremony as well as a very warm welcome atmosphere over here. There's a huge presence of press over here, and the cameras all point to the aircraft as well as the event where President Xi has arrived over here. And then you just witnessed the entire process. Now President Xi has just left at the San Francisco International Airport. Now on our way to the airport, we saw crowds of Chinese compatriots. They gather and they hold banners that says "Welcome President Xi," as well as they're holding the Chinese national flag and the U.S. national flag. And I believe the Chinese president will be able to see on his way on the airport highway. So certainly, especially in the downtown San Francisco, as well as especially in Chinatown, a lot of the places has been decorated and with banners that welcome the Chinese president, as well as boosting the atmosphere for the upcoming APEC meeting. Now, during the APEC meeting, President Xi is expected to attend it, and a lot of things will be on the agenda. China wants to pursue a concept of the community, Asia-Pacific community of a shared future. And that includes several folds, including sustainable development, including peaceful development, and many other high topics on agenda would be discussed in the following days. Now back to you, Mama.
Yeah, it will certainly be a busy week ahead there. Thank you so much, Yunfei, for giving that update. And now let's also check in the latest with our reporter Xu Xinchen. He joins us live near the venue for the 2023 APEC Summit. Xinchen.
Yes, Momo. So right behind me, it is Moscone Center, the main venue for this year's APEC Economic Leaders meetings, and it will be a week long and with ministerial meetings and of course the leaders meeting. Most importantly, the highly anticipated meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden. And the meeting really comes at a time with positive signs of thawing in the U.S.-China relations. And as we have learned that Chinese President Xi Jinping just landed in San Francisco, and the local people have been actually going on the street and putting up Chinese flags and American flags and playing very famous and patriotic songs, Chinese song "Ode to Motherland" near this block. Actually, I can literally hear the song right now, and I've been speaking to these enthusiastic, passionate Chinese Americans or Chinese descendants here in San Francisco, and a lot of them actually travel from Philadelphia or even New York to just witness this, to at least have a sneak peek into this meeting of the two leaders. And they've told me that they are hoping for a better bilateral ties between the two countries, and it's not just good for them, but also for, amid today's global uncertainties, it's great for those two countries to work together. So President Xi Jinping himself has said that 38 years ago, he visited San Francisco during his first visit to the U.S., and the Chinese president have said multiple times that the U.S.-China relations is one of the most important bilateral ties in the world, and it matters much to world peace. And speaking of numbers, China and the U.S. are the world's two largest economies. And speaking of people living in these two countries, they account for nearly a quarter of the global population. And speaking of trade, bilateral trades between China and the U.S. account 1/5 of the global total. and people-to-people exchanges here in San Francisco. It has the first Chinatown in America, witnessing how Chinese descendants are building their vision of their culture here across the Pacific Ocean. And of course, earlier I spoke to the London High School deputy principal. Actually, she told me that she's very happy to see that the sending of her students to China, that give them a better connection with the world and helping them to better understand humanity. And speaking of business community here in San Francisco, especially these high-tech firms, they are closely looking at the innovations parts or technological cooperation talks might happen between the two leaders. And I've spoke to one Dutch businessman doing business in Silicon Valley. They're saying they're using a lot of really good quality Chinese imports in the U.S., but right now the 25% tariff on them really kind of burdens them the cost. And if the two countries can work together, the two countries can actually grow global market and while actually boosting their own domestic growth. Mama.
Great observation there. Thank you so much, Xinchen, for giving us that update. So we could also hear the music at the backdrop of his report. And Professor Liu, I believe that is the music to welcome in President Xi Jinping, because California has one of the largest Chinese communities in the United States. Yes. And this, of course, is a patriotic moment for the overseas Chinese there.
Yes, that reminds actually the Chinese history, appearing on the American continent. They were there to pave the road, for the far west development to the United States. I still remember that within the Iceland, they also have a sort of a big quotation from some of the new immigrants over there. Before I stepped on America's soil, I thought, every road was really paved by gold. And now I'm landing in America and see that I have to pave the road. So actually, many of the Chinese workers, they really helped a great deal to develop the far west. And actually, I visited Stanford University. They also have good memories of the Chinese contribution over there. And now the Chinese business community, they are pretty much settled over there with the Chinatown, very robust and also very open. And actually, I see it's cleaner than the New York one. So, and now with this community does not only become a stabilizing force for the local level, but they are also the political constituencies to the California government, and particularly for the management of San Francisco as a very celebrated city. And then also we can see that more of the Chinese communities over 2 or 3 or even 4 generations, they produce more of the educated people, because many of them were poor families to begin with, but they all bet on their children. They drive their children like crazy to work very hard, to go to the best schools, to join the best at the company, etc., and to build the right type of entrepreneurship. So therefore, these people, they are really from pigtails now into a new modern look and become responsible citizens. And they are also continue to be the catalyst to bridge the communication between China and United States, both on the civil level and also on business level.
Sure, some very interesting observation there. And finally, before we wrap up, very quickly, Professor Liu, if you could, explain to our international viewers the complexity of bilateral relations and some of the items that we could be looking out for during the summit.
Well, the relationship is pretty much intertwined. There is military coercion, but there is also strong economic and business cooperation. And the interdependence is going to be further fostered between these two countries because more and more people, the taxpayers, are realizing that confrontation will lead to destruction on mutual sides. And we do hope that there's going to be a new chapter after this summit, and with more of the follow-up work by ministers and by also those functional level people, so that they can really paint the right type of picture and pave the right road for us to lead to common prosperity and also shared efforts.
Thank you so much for sharing with us your insights, Professor Liu Baocheng. We appreciate your perspectives. And that's going to do it for our special coverage. Stay tuned on CGTN for some more on the China-U.S. summit and, of course, the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting. Follow us on CGTN digital platforms. I'm Wang Mengmang in Beijing. Thanks for watching.